Welcome to the Eternal ROI podcast, where we share the real stories of workplace transformation. And now, here are your hosts, Will Stewart and Chris Patton.
Welcome to the Eternal ROI podcast, where we share the real stories of workplace transformation. I'm Will Stewart, and I'm joined as always by Chris Patton, CEO of His Way at Work. Hey, Chris.
How are you, Will?
Doing good, man. How about yourself?
Doing great.
Great.
Doing great.
Awesome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, me too.
And I want to introduce to you today, our guest is David Martin. David is CEO of Tribe 513.
That's right. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you.
Thank
Looking forward to the conversation. Should be a lot of fun.
Likewise.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So Tribe 513 is super special, and there's some interesting things that you guys have done differently than everyone else. I can't wait to unpack all that and talk about it. But at first, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about Tribe 513, what you guys do.
Yeah, sure. So we are a collection of medical practices. So Tribe 513 is the tax ID number. It's the parent company for Parkside Pediatrics, Brewer Internal Medicine, Parkside OBGYN. We have a breastfeeding center, an outpatient breastfeeding center. So Tribe 513 is technically the umbrella that all those divisions or brands live up under, and I'm the CEO of that company. Married, have 4 kids, live on a farm in Fountain Inn, South Carolina. So when I'm not at work trying to lead things there, I'm at home herding cattle and gathering chicken eggs.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how long has Tribe 513 been around, and kind of how big are you guys now?
Yeah, so Tribe 513, we have about 370 employees, about 60 providers, so physicians and APPs, and we have 9 locations across upstate South Carolina. Tribe actually started, so Parkside Pediatrics was the first practice, and it started about 14 years ago, and with just 1 location. That was started by 3 guys who all trained together at the local hospital system here. They had a vision to go out and own their own practice, which was really not a normal thing for residents, a young physician to go out and do. But the 3 of those guys did it, and from the very beginning, they said God rescued their company multiple times. They had insurance checks that had sat in drawers for 6 months. They didn't cash them. I mean, they just completely should have run the business into the ground, but God bailed them out a lot. And I joined them when they were in their 6th or 7th year, so I've been there for about 7 years now. And since I got there, we've basically grown Parkside into 4 or 5 locations, started an internal medicine practice, started OBGYN, and then Tribe was kind of birthed out of that.
That's fantastic.
That's incredible. So there's some things that make you guys different than just, doing the work that you do from the outside looking in. Mm-hmm. I know that you have a heart toward your culture. You have a heart toward the people that work with you and for you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think probably the best thing to do is to start with our core values, which are and these are in order of priority for us. And it's for us. And I say us. It's for the owners of the practice, for myself as CEO, for our COO, that we feel that we are called by God to love and serve with grace and humility. Mm-hmm. And then the second tenet is we will pour into one another head, heart, and hands. And then the final one is we must work with relentless hunger and conviction. So it's a God first, our family second, both our work family, but also your family at home, your wife at home, your kids at home, your mother at home. And then it's the patient. And that's pretty atypical for a medical practice or for any business to say my client isn't first. Sure. And that's on our website. So our patients can actually see that they're last.
That's good.
And there's a method to the madness. And then that obviously it's we believe God has given us all of this and can take it all away. And as long as we do our best to try to serve him and steward his resources well, then he'll continue to bless us with more and more patients. And then when we take care of our team the way that we try to take care of them and take care of their families, they come to work hungry, ready to work, and our patients ultimately benefit from that. So that's really our three tenets.
Unlike the cobbler whose children have no shoes, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Reverse that.
It's exactly right. We have a saying around Tribe that says our culture is what subsidizes our practice. So in the healthcare world, it is really hard to be independent and not be owned by or employed by a big hospital system. So those bigger systems have other ways to generate revenue, imaging and ORs, and they have a hospital to subsidize it. We have to make money on and survive on volume and ear infections and physicals, and not to say that there's not complicated things that come through our doors, but it's just a lot of routine stuff. And so we can't pay a nurse what a local hospital system could pay a nurse. So not only has God brought us patients, he's brought us people that want to be part of a bigger culture. And so when they buy into that culture literally subsidizes our practice, subsidizes our business.
That's incredible. What was the impetus for starting this, for having an unusual model? Because a lot of businesses don't do that. They, it's customer first, client first, patient first.
I mean, it definitely started with the three Parkside guys as physicians. So one is an elder at church. Two of them are elders at different churches here. Their faith is a huge piece of who they are. The third partner as well, and that's just something from the very beginning when they first opened and didn't know how to run a business at all. They just put their faith in God, in Christ, and trusted that he was going to make them be successful. And he did. And so when I came on board, I was hitching my wagon to something that already had a lot of momentum. And when we created the internal medicine practice, we partnered with a few internists in town, and we kind of dated for a while. So we just helped them do some of their back office stuff. They saw patients, and after about a year or two, we said, you know what, you have a lot of the same beliefs that we have. We can do this better together. Imagine the amount of people that we can touch and have an impact on if we do this together. So when we did that, when we brought Parkside Pediatrics and Brio Internal Medicine together, I think we had around 100 or 125 employees, and now we have about 370, and that's just been over the last few years. So God's really blessed us.
That's fantastic.
It's incredible. So cool.
Yep.
So, for you, for coming in 7 years, you must have had the same kind of philosophy, mindset, that sort of thing. What is it in you that when you saw this job opportunity, you're like, yes, I want to be a part of this group? Yeah,
it's a great question. So I was finishing my master's and worked for a big hospital system in town. Had great opportunities there, had people that did a lot for me there. I worked for the COO. I mean, if you want to say that I was in the club, I was in the club. And as long as I didn't punch somebody in the face or do something stupid, I'm probably going to be promoted there and eventually be a campus president or some executive there. And I had a mutual friend who said, you need to meet these three guys who started Parkside Pediatrics. I said, yeah, I know them. They're an independent group, one of the few independent groups in town. Mm-hmm. I know those guys. I'd love to sit down. So we had coffee, the three guys and I did, and they weren't really looking for they weren't looking for an administrator. They were picking my brain, honestly, about some real estate stuff they were looking at. They were looking at doing another office. And I just saw something different in those three guys and how they spoke. And I could just see three servant leaders over that cup of coffee, and I was drawn to it. And we left and didn't have any other conversations, but a couple months later they texted and said, hey, let's get together again. How would you like to be? And they ultimately, how would you like to become our administrator? And literally I said, I'm kind of working my way up over here at this bigger hospital system. I don't need to leave what I've built there to go run a pediatric practice. And they said, yeah, but we feel God's called us to who knows what we're going to get into. Yeah. And I prayed about it with my wife, and I eventually felt God saying, you need to be around these three men. And it'd be good for you. It'd be good for your faith. They'd help you grow, iron sharpening iron, and the rest is history.
It's a big risk.
It was a very big risk. And I was I played it safe a lot in my life, and that was a huge risk walking away from that.
So what did people say around you, mentors, advisors, peers, when you said, I'm leaving this to go do that?
Yeah, the folks who were stronger in their faith understood it and said, totally, you got to go do it. And those who maybe weren't, or maybe they were strong in their faith, but they just were more conservative and thinking, how could you leave something where you've really worked your way up and built that safety net benefits? I mean, literally the first question I asked the guys, like, do you guys even offer health insurance? They're like, yeah, it's not very good, but we do. It's one of the things you're going to help us do better. But it was a wide range of advice from folks. And I think the people who really understood the faith component and what I needed, not to mention, I thought there was going to be a fun opportunity in terms of business and the entrepreneurial spirit that they had. Sure. And look, here we are. So I literally went to go join them, and they were just pediatrics. I think they had 35 employees or 40 employees maybe, and now we're into internal medicine, OBGYN, and we have a property management company. We have a little construction company, and the construction company, we were just meeting this morning. They're now meeting with Jumpstart. We're going to employ some folks that are in the Jumpstart program, which is putting folks that have served time in prison. Yeah. So it's awesome to see God put so many different things in our path, and it's fun to work on it with those three guys specifically. Yep.
Well,
incredible.
he'll honor it when you jump.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Very cool.
That's right.
Yeah. So a caring culture, a place, we probably need to define what caring culture is, but a place where employees feel safe, where they're, loved and they're taken care of, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. First describe kind of what a caring culture means for your company, and then how did you do it? Because that's, for a lot of people who might be listening and watching right now, they may have the mindset where they're like, man, I'd really love to do this. I think this is a nice thing. It sounds really great. I mean, how in the world do you even get started?
Yeah. So if you're smaller, you got to use the resources that you have. As an owner or an executive, you need to be dialed in and listening. You need to have people that are your eyes and ears on the ground to try to hear what are folks struggling with, especially the ones who maybe have a little too much pride to say it. And we've got a lot of those who are struggling, but they're not saying it. And you see them and you think they are. You have a story that you think they are struggling. So once you get a little bit larger, where we were, and this is where we hired His Way at Work to come in to help us have some better processes. But that ultimately is, we figured we were only touching 10% of the needs out there, and they happened to probably be the loudest people who were at the break room table saying, yeah, I'm getting ready to get kicked out of my apartment, or really struggling with my faith right now, or my husband and I are thinking about getting separated, or I've got a teenage son who has bad anxiety and I can't parent well, or whatever the issue was. Everybody, the needs are so vast. It's not all monetary. And so for us, it was two things. One, how do we cast a larger net to make sure we're capturing those folks who aren't loud at the break room table? And then two, what can we do that's more than just writing a check or paying somebody's rent?
Right.
And that's important for people. But what can we do to actually challenge them on being a better husband, father, parent, spouse? That's really, and that requires you to press a little bit and to ask people to be uncomfortable. And so trust doesn't get built overnight. The people who had worked for our company for a long time, it was a very natural progression for them to see some more of this, us getting more disciplined around this. Like, oh yeah, that's just how the original owners were. They've always been giving, and they always had a caring. But for maybe some of the new people who have just joined our company, they don't know David Martin, they don't know Justin Marl, they don't know the partners, and they want to trust, but that takes time. And so when you have a process that allows for those folks to share the struggles they're going through, that I'm not going to hear about it, the partners probably aren't even going to hear about it, they're not going to be judged on that issue that's going on in their life, that they're actually going to be able to receive some help from our company without having to have us be aware of it or know about it.
Right.
And then there are others who, just because of our culture, they will come to me and say, hey, I'm really struggling. My wife and I, we just can't get along. I see you and your wife, and I'm sure you argue. I'm like, we argue plenty, a lot. I'll call her right now. I can show you right now. But just allows us to pour into one another. That's why we say pour into another head, heart, and hands. And sometimes it's pouring in to teach you to be better at your job, and other times it's pouring into you to be a better spouse, just like I would expect for you to pour into me, for me to be a better spouse.
Sure. So back up to 10,000 feet. What, to you, we use this term caring culture. What does that really mean? What does it mean in the Tribe 513 context? But to a business owner out there that has never heard that description before, what actually is it, and what's the purpose? What are you trying to get? What's the deal there?
I mean, ultimately, a caring culture suggests that you're not in the business to make money. In our bit, you're not in the business to see patients. And you're not even in the business to provide jobs. You have to have all those things. You don't have a business. If you believe that you're put on this earth to love people and to care for people and to meet them where they are and to find out, what does Chris need right now in his life that would show that I care about you the most? It may not be say, hey, here's a check. Thanks for doing a great job.
That help.
Yeah, no, that would help. It's like a fresh coat of mulch. It covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah.
Right.
But if somebody says, no, that's not my love language, or that's not what I'm going through right now, I need you to care for me in a different way. That, for us, a caring culture is, and look, a good culture, it costs money, it costs time. I'm a huge, this biggest struggle for me is I have a big scarcity mentality around my time. 4 kids, CEO, like to get in a lot of different things. I got a garden to plant. I got goats to do whatever you can do from goats. I mean, I got things I got to do. So I really struggle sometimes stopping and wanting to understand what's going on in somebody's life. But But in order to have a good culture, you have to slow down. You have to put your money where your mouth is. You have to invest in people, invest in resources. You don't just get a culture because you say, hey, I read a Harvard Business Review article on how millennials really want a good culture. They want to feel a part of something. And so we talk about that one time, and that's it. I mean, it is repetitive, communicating it, putting discipline, over-communicating it, putting discipline around it and structure around it, making people feel safe,
right,
and then just walking the walk, talking the talk, and that's ultimately what a caring culture is. But it is at a 10,000 foot level. Culture kills everything else. That is what that's what we believe, and so that's what we invest in more than teaching a nurse to be a better nurse. She's probably going to be a pretty decent nurse, especially in our business. And you've got to have the technical skills. A doctor got through med school, probably going to be a pretty good doctor. But what can we pour into you that's more around the caring piece to teach you to be a better physician, how to care for patients in a different way?
Right.
It's the stories that touch me the most are the ones where a physician stops and prays with two parents who are arguing over their 12-year-old, the visits with the 12-year-old, but the two parents are arguing because they can't agree on anything, and the physician says, I need to stop and pray for both of you right now, which if you think about it, can be a little bit insulting. I'm basically going to stop and pray for you right now because I think you guys are screwing up, and I need to do that. That's what a caring culture ultimately is. So the MA or the nurse sees that, and then she goes out and she feels free to be able to pray with a patient or a team member.
And we'll back you up. You made a comment at the beginning of that. You said, if you believe you were put on this earth to. So to me, what I'm hearing you say, and I agree in total with this, the caring culture that we're talking about starts with the purpose of carrying out God's love, displaying God's love through us to those that work with and for us.
That's right.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, if you boil it down to that, then you shouldn't be at a loss for words. You shouldn't be able to come in and say, I don't know, David, how you want me to carry this out. And I even say, well, because we have a lot of people that work in our company, they're not a Christian, they're not believers, and man, they're some of the brightest, most caring people that we have.
Yeah.
And I always say, if you're not a Christian, but you read some of the things that Jesus said, and you read God's word, there's some really great ways to lead in that. Show grace, be humble, be a servant leader, love unconditionally. I mean, there's so many of those qualities that even if you say, well, I'm not a Christian, that's cool. Are those qualities and traits that you would like to have? Can you buy into that?
Yeah.
Just because I say that's why I believe I'm here, that's my sole purpose, doesn't mean you have to say that.
That's exactly right. Well put. Well put. So I want to shift a little bit. I want to ask, you've talked a good bit and you've given some examples around what you guys do at Tribe 513 internally, right? And one of the things that we found, and as I talk to CEOs all over, one of the first things that they do, and I was guilty of the same thing, is start to realize God has a purpose for the business, and then we start looking outward into the community. Mm-hmm. How can we go out into the community and share this love? And we often overlook the employees right there in front of us, right? So you're describing, we're kind of talking about that internal. We've got to start there. Yeah. But let's go ahead and go outside the business, because you guys do a ton outside of your employee base. What is it that you're doing? How do you approach it? Mm-hmm. How do you, in particular, as CEO, take a balance between focusing on the employees and building the culture internally versus, or in addition to, or at the same time as, ministering and caring for the community?
Yep. So we start at the beginning of the year to say, what are we expecting our profit's going to be in our budgets here? You might not be right, but we estimate that, and we set aside 5% of our profit. And then we put into 3 buckets: internal tribe, those are our tribe team members and their families, and maybe patients, but mainly our team members. The second bucket is Greenville, South Carolina, upstate South Carolina, and then the third bucket is international. So we've talked a lot about what we do internally we have caring team and have a lot of structure and discipline around that. I'd say we put a little more than half of our money that we set aside for this into that bucket. Probably put 10 to 20% in the bucket for kind of local upstate, and we've partnered with Miracle Hill in the past. We've gone straight to DSS. So for Parkside Pediatrics, it's all around orphans and vulnerable children. For Brio Internal Medicine, we partner with an organization called Switch around sex trafficking. And so we try to be very specific and not just, again, going back to where we could write a check to this society or this whatever. And we've done that. Sometimes you just need to write a check to organization that needs it. But we like for it to be strategic. So if Parkside Peds is going to get involved in something, let it be around orphans and vulnerable children. If Brio is going to get involved, let it be around sex trafficking and abuse. And that's that's kind of our strategic plan for our mission tribe, is what we call it. And so that's the local bucket. And the third bucket is for Parkside Pediatrics. We've adopted a village in Guatemala called El Chico. And we send 2 groups from internally within tribe there a year. We partner with an organization down there called Hope of Life, and half of what we do is we give them money to invest in bathrooms and schools and churches and things like that. And then the other half, what we do is we help subsidize trips for our internal team members who want to go down there, because it's as much about the value that they get and the sort of the soul resetting that they get. I've been down, took my whole family, took my kids and my wife, and it's we were in Guatemala for a week serving and sweating, and we got way more out of it than the few bricks that I put together for somebody. So that's a constant yearly, biannually or yearly thing where you're sitting back and saying, is that we're God? Or do we want to be in Guatemala because we want to be in Guatemala, or we want to be in Guatemala because God's calling us to be in Guatemala? Are we listening? Maybe He doesn't want us to be in Guatemala. Maybe He wants us to be in South Carolina some more. So every year we sort of step back and say, did we use the money in the right way? Did we get the biggest bang for our buck? Did God get the biggest bang for His buck on the 5% of profit that we gave? Do we need to tweak anything going forward?
That's excellent. So you've touched on several areas where the employees themselves are engaging. So it's not just how does Tribe 513 donate or even engage, but so talk a little bit more about specifics, both in the upstate as well as in Guatemala. What are the employees doing? How many are engaged typically? What are your expectations? If an employee says, I'm not interested, what does that look like?
Yeah. So locally, we shut down our offices 4 times a year. So the second bucket that I mentioned for locally in the upstate, we close our offices down for about a half a day, and we'll go serve. So we'll go to Miracle Hill thrift stores and repaint or categorize clothes. So the last one we did at the end of this past year was we had groups of folks just walking down Main Street in downtown Greenville handing out, $5 and a note that said, we love you and God loves you. And it was really cool because it's a little bit of a pay it forward type of thing. What we saw that night and the next day on social media from some people that we just so happened, and sometimes it was maybe somebody that looked to be like a homeless person there. It was that, but it could have been someone dressed like you or me getting a cup of coffee and going, hey, here, God loves you. Here, let me pay for your coffee. Here's $5 and pay for your coffee. And it was really funny because I had a guy text me out of the blue, and he goes, somebody from your company just bought my coffee. And it just meant, he's well-to-do. He didn't need $5, but the message that God loves him was really what he needed that morning. And he said, it just is exactly what I needed. And so our team member, it's hard. We don't have many team members that don't want to participate in things like that.
Right.
Get a lot of buy-in because it's fun. It's engaging. They're praying with people on the street. It's really some touching things. The mission stuff, the international is a little bit, that's not everybody is comfortable doing that or wants to do it. So what we try to do is help them remove those barriers. So is it financial? Is it you scared? You don't want to leave your husband for a week. Maybe he can go. So we try to remove those barriers and those obstacles. And some people, we've never really had anybody just flat out say, I think giving to people is a bad idea and I don't want to participate in it. But there's probably some folks that we have internally that maybe don't like the fact that we're going to Guatemala, or they don't like closing down the office and going to serve. They're not comfortable doing that. That's okay.
What do you think, hypothetically, what do you think it'd look like if you're doing these things externally and you're not doing the first bucket? You're not spending the time, energy, and money internally for the culture, but the employees see what you're doing in the local community, may even be a part of it, and then they see what's going on outside in Guatemala.
Yeah.
How do you think they take that? And would they be vocal, or are they pretty much going to be quiet, just disengage? What are your thoughts there?
That's a really good question. I think I'd love to tell you that all 370 would get behind it and go, oh, no, give 100% of the money that you're talking about giving to non-tribe. But the fact that we literally, I'm not mincing words with it, they know they're first. They know God in terms of our core values. They know God's first, but in terms of these buckets, this mission tribe buckets, they are first. They're first, and their families are first for us, because we can touch that more. We can really understand. So if I give you a $5 bill, or one of my team members gives you a $5 bill, pays for your coffee, that could have touched you in a great way, and that's really great. But what if I'm not helping the physician who's having marriage problems out at our Spartanburg location because I'm not there once every couple of months, and I'm ignoring that, but I'm sending a team to Guatemala to go. So that's where it just takes a lot of prayer, a lot of conversation. It's not just a willy-nilly, we're going to have money going here and there. It's being very strategic about what are you going to do with your money. And again, for us, checking that first box of saying we're going to take care of our team members first.
Right.
And we say no to things too. And we have things internally that we have, so-and-so has an issue, has this, they need this, and we have to say no.
Sure.
And that's really, really hard. So you could have somebody like that just got told no, but then a week later I send an email and say, hey, we're getting ready to go to gearing up for our next Guatemala trip. And they're sitting there doing the math on plane tickets and this and that. But
that's where the trust comes in you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And so consistent behavior over time where you are building culture, not for the sake of culture, but your purpose, because God puts you here to love on them.
That's right.
Then over time, even when you have to say no, it's easier for them to accept, and it's also easier for them to see what's going on beyond them.
That's right.
And it makes more sense.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. And it creates a really cool opportunity for a nice conversation if you say no to somebody, or you've said yes to people, or someone that has never had a need like that financially internally that comes and says, why are we giving so much? I just need a raise. Why are you giving, if you would not give 5% of the profits away, I could actually make the same salary that my nurse friend who's working, down the street is making. And we're a pretty transparent, honest company. I'm a pretty transparent guy. And my response would be, I could make more money. Everybody here could make more money. It's just not what we're about, what we feel that we're called to do. And if you don't like it, I'm not going to judge you for not wanting to be a part of it. I mean,
Sure.
That's some of the best conversations I've had with people, whether it's we're recruiting a physician to come in. I start off right off the bat and say, here's what we're about. Just want to let you know if you say we're a Christian company, I mean, this isn't a Christian table or a Christian chair, but I mean, we are a company that's led by Christians, by believers, and we're going to put God first and our family second. And you don't have to be a Christian. We just want to let you know that's how we show up, how we try to show up.
And want you to hold us accountable to that.
Right. Yeah.
Whether you are or not.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. Just Christian, not Christian, whatever. I promise you are going to come to me one day and say, David, you said a cuss word. You said something judgmental. You said this, and I probably did. I'm really sorry about that. I'm broken. Thanks for letting me know. Or, hey, David, you were gossiping about your wife. You were gossiping about something you said about your wife, and I know I'm a sarcastic guy, and you did it with kind of sarcastic love, but C.S. Lewis says, sarcasm is not really the right way to go. So just want to let you know that. That is our culture. And so when we have new people who come to work for us or they're interviewing with us, we just lay that out there. We don't say, now, do you go to church? What church do you go to? You can't do that at all. But we just say, this is what we are about. And we're a transparent company, and we're going to hold each other accountable, and you're going to get to fuss at me one day when not making enough money, but you're seeing us support this mission or this internal team member or whatever, and that may make you mad. All I ask is that you come and share those feelings with me so that I can listen to you. And that may be all I do is just listen and go, man, it sounds like you're struggling with that. Can I pray for you? It's who we are. And if money is the single biggest driver for you, this may not be the right place for you to work. And I'll be the first one to give you a good reference if you're good. But most people know what they're getting into when they come work for us. And so we just have very few surprises when people get here. They're like, I didn't know David was a Christian. Well, I know we give money to mission village in Guatemala. I mean, we literally have pictures of during their when they're interviewing. Here's some pictures of a recent trip to Guatemala. So we do our best to try to let them know on the front end. And then for CEOs out there listening, that's you just be proactive about explaining that message and what you want your culture to be before people even come work for you.
That's right.
And then
they don't need the surprise.
They don't need the surprise.
No, I had a situation, this has been years ago, but we opened, in my former career in the car business, opened our meetings with prayer, sales meetings. New employee, first day on the job, we bow for prayer, he walks out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tracked him down, and he said, "Man, I didn't know. I mean, I don't believe in that, and it just shocked me.
Yeah.
Shame on me. We didn't
Yeah.
do a good job ahead of time setting expectations and just letting them know.
Yep.
It's not about you got to believe this to work here. It's about I just want to let you know what we believe.
Yep.
We welcome you here either way.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
What's the response been when you're across the table from someone? When you lay that all out, is it mainly positive? Is it where they say something positive to your face, but then they never return calls? I mean,
Yeah.
or is there just a immediate pushback?
So for the ones that are new, and I say this is what we're about, this is kind of where we give our money. This is, if we have a decision to do this over giving everybody raises, we may pick raises one day, but there may be a time where we pick this decision, and that. I guess when they're trying to come work for us and they're not in the door yet, I get very little pushback. I've had a couple physicians specifically go, okay, so I'm not going to make the same amount of money that my friend just is a resident, he's making on the street, and you're going to pray before meetings, you're going to do at provider meetings, you're going to ask me to even do a devotion. I was like, no, I probably won't ask you to do one. Maybe one day you can lead one, but we are going to ask somebody to do one, or I'm going to lead one, and it's just what we're going to do. And I've had a couple folks go, yeah, I don't know this is for me, and that I respect that. I mean,
sure.
It's sometimes it's disappointing, but ultimately I respect people that have a lot of self-awareness in that and don't tell themselves, well, I really just need this job. Or I heard this was not just a Christian company, but a fun company. We have a lot of fun. I mean, literally live a life of fun and play is another one of our core tenets. And because I just think most people kind of not most people, a lot of people go through their day too serious. They don't laugh. They think work is not the place to have fun. And, we work really, really hard, and we also have a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And so people hear about that, and they think, well, Tribe 513, I mean, Tribe, I guess the name Tribe, it's got to be a fun. There's a gym named Tribe. It's got to be a fun place, and trampoline parks and all this kind of stuff. And it is. We do a lot of that stuff. But there are going to be some things that we do that may not jive with you. And I've had very few people, once they're in the door, come to me and I push back on something, and they really say, man, David, you totally bait and switched me. I'm totally caught off guard by this. And that doesn't mean when all people come and say, I know exactly what you're about, David, and what your partners are about and what the company's about, but I'm personally right now struggling, and I don't want to listen to you pray or do a devotion. The fact that you are that type of company, I think is what precipitates that conversation to begin with, because even though it's them coming and saying, I'm really struggling with you doing this right now, it opens the door for a conversation. Maybe not right then, because that may not be the right time, but it puts it on my heart to be able to pray for that person, check in with that person a month later, ask somebody who works with that person on a daily basis, say, hey, I think John's really struggling. Have you seen, is there anything we can be doing? And that's really what a caring culture that's when the tentacles start to spread, is when there's other people going. Right. And it can feel a little bit like gossip, which is we do a ton of talking around what gossip is and how we define it, because there is a line between somebody going, well, I'm not going to say to go to David or go to somebody and say that John is struggling, because that's gossip. It's not gossip if boom, boom, boom. And so we really try to delineate those so that we're not leaving anybody out there that we don't know about just because someone's afraid to gossip about them.
Yeah. Note just on what you said a second ago, when you see others in the company carrying out that caring heart, believer or not,
right?
That's when you know you've got the culture, right? And that's one of the things we work so hard on, is trying to set up a system so that everybody in the company is part of the caring. It's not resting on your shoulders. You lead, you cast the vision, but you are not the chief carer.
Totally.
Otherwise, it doesn't happen.
You're not going to cast a big enough net.
What happens when you're on vacation?
Right. Yeah. The highlight of my month is the monthly caring activities report I get from our committee that leads it. And again, like I said, we didn't always have that. We had to, you got to take baby steps with it, and you got to, if you don't have a caring culture, you got to do the things to put that in place. But when you get to a point where you have a big enough employee base, and you need a separate caring team that's going to kind of go out and cast that net, figure out what all those things are. I mean, the report I get at the end of the month said, here's the 50 things we did, and it's it could be a $10 spend here or not a $10. I mean, I bawled my brains out. We have one of our dogs died after a space surgery that went bad last year, and I got to my desk on Monday, and there was a handwritten note from our caring team that said, "Prayed for you," and it literally was she had a drawing of the dog she had found on our Facebook page of the dog sitting on our front porch and had it kind of hand sketched. I mean, I bawled my brains out. Everybody around me thought I was crazy, but I'm not even aware of what that team is doing at this point. I was a lot more aware of it 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Now I'm not even aware of what they're doing until I see that report, and I'm like, holy smokes, look at the 50 things we did just this month. Yeah. And there's a quantification. If it was cost money, there's a value to it. So we're still sticking to a budget. It's not a free willy-nilly type of deal. And that's the highlight of my month every month.
That's cool.
And just think, if you didn't have that process in place, that's 50 or whatever opportunities every month that go by. They're missed.
They're missed
completely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we've talked a lot about the good. Is there along the way some things where you made some mistakes, where you're like, man, we tried this thing out, or we tried doing this and it just didn't quite work for us? What are anything that comes off to mind of just like some pitfalls that other CEOs could avoid?
I think so. The first thing that comes to mind is, if you claim to have a caring culture, and let's just say you do, and then let's just say you do a really good job at hiring folks that, Christian or non-Christian, but they fit that caring culture, you can't get lazy with all your other core business stuff like your HR policies, and no one's ever gonna tattletale on us to an external. Let's just say because we have to fire people, and Jesus had to fire people, so we have to fire people that don't do a good job, and we give them a lot of opportunity. We show as much grace as we can. We see what else going on in their life right now. How can we weigh all that? But if you have somebody that hasn't worked out, even if they're a Christian, you can't just assume that we can get lazy or not have our guard up on just all the fun HR stuff that we all have to live with, because, we got a bunch of people that know our hearts are good. They'll never try to rat us out to somebody. Yeah. I'm not saying we do anything wrong, but
they'll cut us slack.
Yeah. And so you just can't get naive and assume that because you're trying to hire the right folks, that you can just get lazy with some of that stuff.
Might frame that a little differently too, and you can't step back from excellence into mediocrity.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
So every process, every business function, excellence.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in this world, Christian fill in the blank equals mediocrity.
Yeah.
Christian organization, Christian nonprofit, Christian business.
Yeah.
And too many people have the thought that, we're serving God, so it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. So Patrick Lencioni, everybody listen probably knows him, but his Ideal Team Player book is one I reference all the time. And he says the ideal team player has smarts, or he defines it kind of a self-aware person, hunger to just work, the work ethic, and then humility. And so we say if you got all three of those qualities, and that's an ideal team player. I think I see more Christians fall into the category where they have two of the three traits, and that is they have humility and self-awareness, but they lack hunger. And so the nickname for that Lencioni says in his book is that's a lovable slacker. And so that's the hardest one to see at the table when you're interviewing them, because they say all the right things. Say, I'm a Christian, I go to church, and you guys are Christians, and that's gonna be great. And you can get a little bit too excited on the front and go, at least we're hiring, this person who seems to believe some of the same things. They're not going to be wigged out. They seem to be a humble person. They're going to show grace, but you can't see the work ethic there yet. And they come in, and firing a Christian, it don't feel good. Firing anybody doesn't feel good. Firing somebody that you go to church with and you're going to see on Sunday because they're just not good at their job, because they're a lovable slacker, that's a really hard thing. So that's Christian companies. That's another thing where we've really probably have learned a lot over the last few years is you can't just hire people that you think, and this would go for whether you're a Christian company or you got a different belief system, you still got to hire for excellence and for a work ethic and experience and those things too.
How do you find that experience, that person? Is it instincts? Is it just, as you're talking to them, you just kind of, can smell out if they're a slacker? Yeah,
we ask a lot of fun questions that try to draw some of that stuff out. Ultimately, checking references is your best bet. Hey, does Sally work? Does she like to work? And so that's what we try to do more often than not. But we have a way of within the first 90 days, and it probably wastes time. So if that does slip by us within the first 90 days, when they get asked to go clean up vomit out in the waiting room from some kid and they don't want to do that, that's that
Pretty good
tells
indicator.
a lot. So it's, a lot of times within the first 90 days, you flush them out.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Sounds bad.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Get it.
And this has been incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this chat so much. We have some kind of quick fire questions as we head toward the end. What's a time management hack for you? I know you said that you have a scarcity mindset when it comes to time. I totally get that. I'm someone that's that way as well, and I'm sure Chris is too. You just want to guard that time. But how do you manage your time with 4 kids? And goats.
Goats and cows and all that stuff. Yeah, so all the goats and the cows, all that work happens either really early in the morning or on the weekends. But for work for me, and for a lot of people, I think email is a huge distraction, and meetings can be a huge distraction. So I read somewhere, picked up on something years ago that has been really helpful for me. I do my absolute best to not check any email before noon and schedule no meetings before noon. So you guys ruined this by having this be at 11:30. So no meetings and no emails before noon, because for me personally, I'm clicking on all cylinders for me, which can not be a lot, but mentally strong, emotionally strong. I'm ready to actually get good work done in the morning. And as I've grown into a CEO role, I've also had to allow myself to have just time to think and read and have some vision time. So that's usually first thing in the morning, and then I'm actually getting good work done on projects or things that really take some thought. Because after lunch, for me, that's when I kind of start to get brain dead and tired. That's when others, a lot of the same things. So I'll schedule my meetings, because a lot of meetings you're not deciding huge things for a company in a meeting. You're talking about things, you're disseminating information, you're building social fabric, you're doing some of the things that meetings are meant for. So I'll try to do most scheduled meetings in the afternoon. I will scan my email before lunch, and if it is an email, literally will scan through it. And as I'm scanning it, if it's something that I think I can respond to in less than 90 seconds, I'll respond to it. And if not, I leave it unread so that it's still there for me. So after my meetings, after my, sometimes at lunch, I'll knock out a lot of emails, but good work time in the morning, meetings in the afternoon, and then emails. Just email management. Don't have your email even opened on your computer. Disable your notifications. It's an adrenaline rush. And for me, it took a long time to get that, to be disciplined enough to actually not have it on, my email even on, and not look at it in the the morning, because you think you can open up your email and someone's got $1 million waiting for you.
Right,
I actually have had that email.
It's a Nigerian prince.
Yeah,
exactly. That's right.
Yeah, and that's so smart, because email will dictate your life.
It will,
and everything seems like an emergency. No one ever sends you an email. It's like, hey, take your time with this.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, I need it now. You know. What's one piece of advice you wish you'd been given 10 years ago?
So I think I personally have grown a lot in self-awareness, and I don't know if anybody out there that does Enneagram. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, and I can. You and I can sit here and argue about the color of that wall, and I want to win that argument. I want to protect my ego, and that's something that someone probably 6 or 7 years ago pointed out for me. No one had ever really pointed out. And I was coming out of a meeting, and he said, "Hey, you really just tried to dominate that meeting, and you didn't need to." And I said, "No, I didn't." And so there was a lot of reflection after that, and it's like lifting weights or getting better at a sport. If someone says, "Hey, David, you're not a very self-aware person. You need to get more self-aware." Okay, what does that really mean? Well, you need to be aware when your chest puffs up. You need to be aware when your face gets red. When you're actually arguing with somebody, you need to be more aware of that so that you can take a breath, take a walk, do something that gets your mind off of wanting to protect your rightness. Because that's, for me, I hold on to that, and I want to win. I'm very competitive, and so I was given that advice. If I had been given that advice 10 years ago, I think I'd be a better Jedi at it now if I'd been working on it for 10 years, because it literally is something that's like, well, I want to get better at golf. You're not going to just go out and be good at golf. You got to practice. I want to lift weights. If you stop lifting weights, your muscles are going to atrophy. So you got to continue lifting weights, which in the self-awareness journey, it means you have to surround yourself with people that are going to hold you accountable. Because if you're not self-aware, how are you going to know that you're not self-aware?
Right.
But to be able to have people around me go, hey, well, I don't know, you are talking to Chris, and I don't know why you seemed like you were getting defensive or getting mad. And I was like, no, I wasn't. I don't think I was. But to have somebody call you out and say, hey, you actually were. I don't really care if you want to do anything about it. I'm just letting you know you seem like you were getting defensive. Oh, okay. Yeah. Thanks. And then to step back and think about what was it that Chris was doing that was making me get defensive. And usually it's around protecting an ego or an idea and being right.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Enneagram 8s, their ability is also their liability.
Yeah.
That strength and that ability to lead.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure.
Immature 8s and mature 8s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Man, what's the top resource or a book that just kind of helps you in life as a CEO?
Man, I love to read. There's a lot. I probably have 3 or 4 books going on at one time.
Yeah.
I think, so one piece of advice that I did get from somebody up to 10 years ago was Andy Stanley's book, Choosing When to Cheat. And it was a book on family work-life balance.
Yeah.
And for an 8, and for somebody that's driven and competitive, I really, if I had not had that book early in my career, I could have put a lot of my identity into my work. And so as far as a foundational book to read for not just executives, but for anybody who can fall into that pitfall where they're going to sacrifice family time. The title of the book is kind of weird. You're sitting in a coffee shop reading Choosing When to Cheat. Somebody's like, what are you reading? But it's when the work life and the family life that collides.
Yeah.
And you're never going to be fully balanced. I believe that our lives are really kind of go. You have a baby, so if you're having a baby, you're gonna be at the hospital. You're probably not gonna be thinking about work,
Right.
And if you got a huge deadline at work, you might be home late that week. And so it is this constant thing. So I would encourage people to not feel like they have to be perfectly balanced, because you're probably never going to be perfectly balanced. And also just know if you have a family at home, or you don't, and you just need personal time to recharge, your work will be there the next day, and it's probably going to be okay if you leave it at 5 o'clock and you leave it on. It's going to be there for you at 8 o'clock in the morning. And you get there the next day.
It's true.
Probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
So don't sacrifice that family time.
Yeah.
That's powerful. So for everybody that's been listening, this is the last question. What do you think's the major takeaway? What do you want people to walk away with from this chat?
Yeah, I think if you feel called in your heart to have your company, have the flavor of your company be that of a caring culture, or something that's based on Christian principles or things that Jesus said, and you believe those personally, but you whether you've ever thought about trying to have your company live out those things or not, maybe this is causing you to think about that. You have to be bold and do it, and don't eat the elephant in one big bite. Take small steps. For us, we had a huge jump start because the 3 partners that founded it were 3 strong Christian men that weren't ashamed of their faith. They didn't want to hide their faith. They were bold about it. And so we just kind of continue to take it and make it that much more public, and actually say to our people and back in the day, it was, well, they know those guys, the 3 owners, are Christians. Then it was getting to the point where we can actually tell them, and we really believe that God is calling us to steward His resources well and to lead this company based on the things that He said in Scripture. And that's just what we're going to be about. I mean, that lines up, that company mission lines up with your personal mission. So why would you not want to live that out? Otherwise, you're kind of having to be a little bit of a chameleon in your personal life. Then you go to work. Why can't you talk about that at work?
That's
Why
exhausting.
can't you? It's exhausting. It kills your emotional energy. And from somebody that says I have a scarcity mentality around time, I have a scarcity mentality around my emotional dollars as well.
Yeah.
And when you have to be a chameleon, for whatever reason, you feel like you're walking on eggshells, you're going to be embarrassed, you don't think people are going to buy into it, you don't think God actually does control your company, it's an illusion that you think, then you're going to struggle. But if you get to that point where that one day you wake up and you say, I'm convicted, I'm going to go do this, do it. Do it before you check your email. Do it before you have your meeting for that day. Go ahead and put one thing in place. And then a few months later, put another little thing in place. Before you know it, 2 or 3 years has gone by, you look back and you're like, wow, look at what God's done. And it's a lot of little things.
Doesn't have to be perfect, just have to start.
Totally.
Yeah.
Just got to do it.
Yeah.
Just got to ship it. We say you just got to ship it.
That's,
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
David, this has been fantastic, man.
Yeah.
What an incredible chat. I really appreciate your generosity
Thanks
talking
for
to us
having me.
about this. Yeah, it's been a lot just learning about you and your company, and just been quite an education. If someone wants to learn more about Tribe 513, where do they go?
Yeah, you go to tribe513.org. It's our website. If you want to, there's always jobs posted there. If you want to just read about our company, if you want to become a patient of any of our practices and look at the different locations, you can go on there. But the Tribe 5, every practice, the Parkside, Brea, they all have their own website. But Tribe 513 really gives the best overall vision for who we are and what we're about. And that's where you can also apply for a job as well. Always looking for great people.
That's great.
That's awesome. So this was the first episode of the podcast, and I appreciate everybody who's listened and watched along. And this is going to be the start of something I think that's going to be amazing, going to be encouraging to a lot of CEOs. And Chris and I have talked a lot about, kind of what we want it to become, and we just want to be a resource that can help other people, encourage people just to act and to do. So we appreciate everybody. Just if you made it all the way to the end, thanks so much. You get a gold star. It's going to be mailed to you. But if you want to listen to us on podcast, just search for Eternal ROI. If you would like to watch, there's also a video component to it where we live stream it as well on Facebook. You just go to Facebook and search for His Way at Work. And if you want to learn more about His Way at Work, just go to hwaw.com and they can help you out. So thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. This was awesome. Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate that.
Bye.